Marilyn Monroe. Introduction and Life. Marilyn was born as Norma Jeannie Mortensen in Los Angeles, California. Later, her mother baptized she as Norma Jeannie Baker. She born on June 1, 1926, and when she had 36 years old, she died of a drug overdose on August 5, 1962. With time, she became one of the most famous artists of Hollywood and one of the main sexual symbols of all times. She began her career as a photographic model, and in 1946 she began to make little parts in some low-budget movies. The important first roles were in the movies The Asphalt Jungle, 1950, and All About Eve, 1952. Its worldwide recognition began after she was the main star in the musical Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, 1953. Also, she appeared in the first of Playboy magazines. She played the lead role in the comedy How to Marry a Millionaire, 1953, The 7-Year Itch, 1955, and Bus Stop, 1956. Thanks to the success of these films, she began to be considered as one of Hollywood's most greatest actresses. Her biggest success was Some Like It Hot, 1959, a film which led she won the Golden Globe for Best Comedy Actress. She was considered one of the sexiest women in the history of cinema, but her great beauty forced her to project a seductive and superficial personality, covering his real personality, sensitive and unstable since childhood. She was married to baseball player Joe DiMaggio in 1954, and then with the playwright Arthur Miller between 1956 and 1962. First years of Marilyn Monroe. Gladys Pearl Baker married the Norwegian Edward Mortensen and separated shortly after she discovered she was pregnant. On June 1, 1926, her daughter Norma Jean Mortensen was born in Los Angeles, California. Gladys, who worked as a negative cutter at RKO Pictures, couldn't keep his daughter for financial and emotional problems and left her in the care of an adopted marriage, Albert and Ida Bollinger, residents in Hawthorne, California. When Gladys got a place on her own, she decided to take his daughter with her, but after a few months she had a nervous breakdown and a custody of Norma Jeannie's was given to the best friends of her mother, Grace McKee, who awakened her interest in films and who encouraged her to be an actress. In 1935, Grace McKee got married and moved to the U.S. West Coast. 2 years later, Olive Brunnings, the uncle of her mother's best friends, got her custody. After Norma accused Grace's husband of raping her, at 12 she was again raped, this time by one of the sons of Brunnings. But at 12, something important happened in her life. She discovered that she had a stepsister by part of her mother. Her name was Berenice, and they started to write letters until one day they could contact. Until the death of Norma, who turned into the star Marilyn Monroe, the sisters had a very close relationship. Norma discovered she was not alone as she thought. Meanwhile, after the rape, she went to live with one of the aunts of McKee, until the aunt began having health problems and was unable to take care of her. Again in the McKee home, Norma made a decision that would change his life. The Mrs. Key's husband had received a job offer and they were going to move, so she would have to go to an orphanage. To avoid this, she married the son of a neighbor, a policeman, in June 1942. Norma was 16 and James Dougherty 21. Ever since she left school to pursue her roles as a good wife and homemaker. In 1943, when the United States joined World War II, Dougherty enlisted in the Navy and was sent as an instructor at Santa Catalina Island, in front of Los Angeles, and then sailed to Australia. Norma Jean was alone. She went with his mother-in-law, who worked in a munitions factory, the Ready Plane Burbank. The career of Marilyn Monroe. Well, while she was working in the factory, a photographer takes her some pictures. Without knowing, he has discovered who in the future will be Marilyn Monroe. By her way, she achieved some modeling and she was in the pages of some magazines. In 1946, she divorced of her husband and tried out in some castings. One of the executives of 20th Century Fox contracted her to work as an extra in some movies during 6 months. Was he who proposed Marilyn Monroe as the artistic name, Marilyn for the actress Marilyn Miller, and Monroe for being the single name of her mother. In Monkey Business, directed by Howard Hawks and acted together with Cary Grant and Ginger Rogers, it showed for the first time which would be her definitive image: short hair waved in a blonde platinum. A few years before it was surrendered to a research rhinoplasty. In 1953, after taking part in movies of low budget, the actress lead roles in Niagara. The president of the 20th Century Fox, Daryl Zanuck, asked for it. That was how Marilyn Monroe replaced Anne Bancroft, and since it obtained unlike critics. Some were saying that she was not good for the paper, and others remained eclipsed for his explosive beauty. After a brief recess, Monroe accepted the paper of The Girl in the Comedy, The 7-Year Itch, of 1955, cinematographic adjustment of the theatrical work of the same name. For her work in this movie she got positive critics of deserved sources and her first nomination to the prize BAFTA as Better Foreign Actress for her part. The 7-Year Itch was a great comedy success, since it collected more than $8 million, but also it contributed to the matrimonial crisis between Marilyn and Joe DiMaggio, disliked by the famous scene of dress and, in general, for the provocative image that Marilyn was projecting. The pair would be divorced rapidly. In the middle of the decade of 1950, Monroe changed to live in New York and stopped acting during a brief period of time. Since she wanted to own her producer of movies and to perfect her acting, a friend suggested her to inscribe in lessons of theater. It was when she registered in an actor's studio, in the classes given by Lee Strasberg. When Strasberg thought that she was sufficiently prepared to act in front of her colleagues, he suggested that her should interpret a scene of her work Anna Christie. For her action in this theatrical piece, it got very positive critiques by her teacher and her colleagues. In 1956, Monroe returned to the cinema, thanks to a new contract that he signed with the 20th Century Fox. In that year, the actress could choose the director. That year was nominated to the prize Golden Globe by Better Actress of Comedy or Musical. 3 days after the death, Joe DiMaggio, her second husband, realized the funeral privately. Personality of Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe had two facets very marked in her personality. On the one hand, she was a woman who was lavish in a great femaleness and vulnerability, glamour and very studied seduction, and was very conscious of her gift as blonde, and very attractive woman sexually that sometimes was taken for silly without being it. On the other hand, Monroe was the slave of the first facet. For her, it was very important what the people that she cared think of her. She developed a neurotic, depressive, and obsessive personality that was revealing lacks of affection in her childhood and youth, that they were affecting her performance in the set, coming late to the films, demonstrating crises of panic. It was assuming impulsive, sudden conduct. After Marilyn. The repercussion of Marilyn Monroe's death was very important. The lives of Frank Sinatra and Pat, friend of the actress, never turned to be the same. Monroe left an endless number of images and words that last in the history, and it will be remembered forever. But also it left things without resolving. What happened exactly the night of her death is a mystery, but her legacy will be maybe the biggest of his epoch. In 2011, several rarely seen photos of Marilyn Monroe were published in a book of photographs by famous photographer Sam Shaw. August 5, 2012 will mark the 50th anniversary of Monroe's death. A half-century later, the world is still fascinated by her beauty and talent.
Thank you for listening.